Today I'm chatting with Dan Titus from NBC Sports Edge, All Roto World, and Yahoo Fantasy, Yahoo Sports. Chatting with him about life as a fantasy basketball analyst. He's obviously got a lot going on and probably not enough hours in the week. Let's go balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Welcome to another episode of the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. FBIbasketball.com is our website. You'll find all of our content over there. At AdamKing91 on Twitter is where you will find me. As I said, today, joined by Dan Titus, part of our one-on-one interview series. These will be coming out over the next couple of months when the fantasy content starts winding down. Dan, thank you for jumping on with me. How are you, man?
Doing great, Adam, and thank you for having me on. And I know you have a great list of guests, so I'm honored to be a part of the process. And yeah, man, happy to talk about family, everything I do outside of fantasy basketball, which isn't much, but yeah, man.
Yeah, no,
look, all is life.
That's right. Well, yeah, I like to think that. Unfortunately, my job gets in the way sometimes. So I guess, for me, fantasy basketball was a hobby turned into a job, but I still have a full-time job going on sort of on the side. Talking with Zach, he's sort of similar. He has a full-time job as well as the fantasy job. In your situation, is this what you do, or do you have another job as well?
Yeah, so my journey has been kind of weird, unorthodox. I actually quit my job right before the pandemic to pursue working in sports, and I didn't really know what I was doing. Frankly, I had a marketing degree coming out of college, and then I got into aerospace and defense for 11 years, doing different program management and operational type functions for satellite and missile defense. And a lot to say. I mean, it was cool, putting satellites in the sky and shooting missiles and stuff, but it just wasn't for me. I was the guy that I was always having to leave, closed areas to check my fantasy rosters, make sure I'm making my pickups and stuff like that. So I've always been like a diehard fantasy guy. And I'm 37 now, and it's not a very ideal career shift when you're doing something completely different. But I think my journey's been a bit of luck, grind, and also opportunity. And I'm fortunate to say, like, now I'm full time in the industry, but it definitely didn't start that way. Nor did I have the thought that it could actually be something in a full time capacity.
And so for you, like, I know talking to Zach and a few of for you guys over there in the States, the entry into fantasy basketball came via fantasy football or like a path. Like, so for you, was fantasy basketball always number one, or were there other sports that sort of led you to this space?
Yeah, I started playing fantasy basketball actually first. It was a company called Small World, where you would do it was like a salary cap. It was DFS before DFS, but it was in a season long form. So there were salaries attached to each player, and you would build your roster based on your salary cap, and then the salary would grow based on performance. So, this is the era of Shaq, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. Like, these were the top picks, Allen Iverson. So I was always a huge basketball head. So I think it was pretty easy for me to, go from being interested in statistics, just looking at basketball cards, to, playing fantasy. And there's just like a really interesting way for me to engage with my friends. And I always thought it was cool. And then as time progressed, I got into fantasy football, started playing fantasy baseball. But the opportunity to cover fantasy basketball didn't really start until I quit my job in the pandemic. Actually, it was right before the bubble. I started covering all of the other news around basketball for fantasy pros. And then that kind of got my foray into, actually talking about this in at least more of just a hobby. And then it became more of something I actually wanted to pursue.
Yeah. So that's a pretty, as you said, that's an interesting time to decide to make a career choice before the pandemic, because sort of being involved with a few different companies over there, I know, talking to people, that during the pandemic, it was hard. Like, that people were laid off and that sort of thing, because just because we didn't know what the future sort of held. So I guess you sort of went that other way and decided to change things up and take a risk.
Yeah.
And so in terms of, I mean, we'll transition to family later, but I can just imagine if I'd done something like that, I'm not sure how my wife would have reacted if I'd gone to her and said, I'm quitting
Hey,
my
guess
job.
what? I'm gonna be broke for the next 2 years. You want to take this ride with me? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty much what it was, man. I'm fortunate. Like my wife is cool as shit. I'm very fortunate that she was able to understand my passion and really wanting me to go for it. And I think that one of the things that she realized over the course of the last 10 years of me doing other things, that I was never really happy. Like I would come home and, I'll just be kind of like not really into like just my life. I had to commute over 2 hours to work every day, and just that grind just started to wear on me. So switching it up, not really, realizing that we were in a financial position that she could hold it down for a certain amount of time, but like I'd have to secure something within the near future
yeah,
uh, to make this work. And fortunately, I got an opportunity to learn a lot of different things over the course of 2.5 years in the pandemic, from production to honing in on my writing to doing video production, audio. And so I was able to find a role at Action Network first as a producer, and also got to um, have a podcast too. So that was actually great that I was still able to practice my craft and my passion for fantasy basketball, all while doing another job. And then fortunately, an opportunity came up with Yahoo last summer that I wasn't expecting at all. I was just going to freelance with them, and wound up turning into a full-time opportunity. So I would say shoot your shot always. Networking is key, especially in this industry. And I think that's the one thing I've always liked a lot about fantasy basketball and just this community, is that everyone's very collaborative, wants to help each other out. It's not like the toxic, annoying stuff that you see on fantasy football Twitter. That's like people just coming at each other, being very, very negative about everything. It seems like everything in basketball is very uplifting, and it's actually really dope. So I'm really happy to be a part of this community and like just kind of grow into it.
yeah. Look, I think Zach and I spoke about this as well. I mean, I've never been part of that fantasy football community, and I'm not, being from Australia.
Yeah.
NFL is not something we grow up with, so it's not something that I follow. I mean, I know enough to get by, but um, my yeah, I mean, I've been, I guess, part of the fantasy basketball community for, I don't know, 6 years, something like that. And it is, you're right, it's very collaborative. Like everyone helps each other. There's no jockeying for position or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
It's you are who you are. You do what you do, and we all promote each other's stuff. So that's probably one of the most enjoyable parts for me, is just getting to meet and talk with a range of people. Everyone's friendly, and just going back to what you said when you sort of got into fantasy basketball, when Shaq was playing, Tim Duncan,
Yeah.
and that was before my time in terms of fantasy. NBA, the exposure we've had to NBA here in Australia has grown substantially in the last decade.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember as a kid, we got one game a week, and it was a replay that was at midnight, sort of thing. So it was all
Man.
about reading newspapers and
Yeah.
checking box scores, and then basketball cards were a big part of it
Oh
as
yeah.
well. But we did during, I think it was during the pandemic. It was when I think it was when the league went into sort of that hiatus of, we don't actually know how we're going to look moving forward. And there was a period of time where there was just no basketball and nothing happening. And we ran with Josh Lloyd actually put it together, and we did I think we called it a historical fantasy draft or something.
That's awesome.
And we drafted players based on specific seasons. So like Michael Jordan, 88, 89
Oh yeah.
season would be your first pick. And we put all the projections together and came out with the whoever had the best squad. And that was just going back through some of those stats from the 90s, like David Robinson, 4
David
blocks a
Robinson's
game. Like,
rookie season, man. 24 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, almost 2 steals. Like, can you imagine that in this day and age?
nah, I
Like, ooh,
can't. No. Although Wembanyama,
yeah.
we'll get to him. We'll get to him a little bit later. But
Yeah.
um, okay. So fantasy obviously now takes up a lot of your time
Yeah.
professionally. It's what you do. Um, And you mentioned to me you've got a 2-year-old, so your 2-year-old will take up
Oh
probably
yeah.
the majority of your time away from basketball. So, but I mean, outside of this space, what is it that you like to do? Like what hobbies? Obviously, there's family thing. You do things together as a family, but
Sure.
what other things do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, before the pandemic, it was definitely a lot of traveling, and my wife and I, big food lovers. So if we can try any kind of new restaurant that comes out that's in the area, we're definitely interested in that. As well as like just I don't have a lot of friends out in the Bay Area. In terms of like I never really was that guy to make friends at work. I feel way better being at Yahoo doing that, even though I'm remote. Like just being able to talk shop and talk sports to people versus like what's happening in engineering is way more interesting to me. But yeah, so I try to spend time with my friends and family as much as I can. With life of a 2-year-old, much of my days and my weekends are finding the latest playground or the newest playground, new activities for him to do and just get immersed in. And that changes by the day. Honestly, one time it's Coco Melon, the next thing it's like, hey, let's go play hoops. So yeah, just doing that. And one other thing I picked up actually over the last couple of years is golf, because
Yeah,
all the hoops around me in the Bay Area were taken down during the pandemic. I had to find somewhere to get outside and do something. And fortunately, the golf courses were always open. So I'm working on my swing. It's not
yeah,
quite there yet, but I'm trying to break 90. That's my goal right now. So, steady. It's going to be some time, but I'm going to be that old head that's going to be like, 60, 70 years old. That's going to be like, just hitting straight down the line, dead
yeah.
center. That's my goal.
Yeah. Oh no, look, I get that. Yeah. I mean, golf is something that I've played just socially. I've never played competition or anything like
Yeah,
that.
no.
But then obviously, yeah, when kids come, like the group of friends that I regularly played with, we all have kids and they get older. But my kids now are both almost teenagers, so I'm at a point now where I can start playing again a little bit more
Yeah, yeah.
regularly. And having had torn my ACL last year, um, my basketball career is, well, it's pretty much done for now, at least for the next few years. And so golf is for me again. That's where I'll be looking to sort of get out and just be outdoors and doing things and doing some activity. Um,
Been meaning to
I
ask you,
just
Adam, what
Yep.
does the Savages?
So
Who are the Savages?
this is Dennis Rodman's high school jersey.
Sick.
Yeah,
That's dope.
so that's why my Twitter handle is 91
Now it
for
all makes
Rodman.
sense. All
Um,
right. All
my
right.
yeah my registration or license plate on my car is 91 as well. Um,
That's sick.
yeah, I've got tattoos are the same. I've got so my registration on my car is Triple H and 091, and Triple H is the wrestler.
Oh
Um,
yeah. I love Triple
and
H. Hunter Host Helmsley.
yeah, yeah. So my son's name is Hunter. So
That's so
he's named
dope.
after him, and I've got Triple H tattoo there and on my arm there. So
So
yeah,
do you remember when he first came out as Hunter Hearst Helmsley?
yeah, I do. Yep.
Nice, nice. I feel like
Yeah,
most people don't remember that. They always remember Triple H and the DX movement, but yeah,
yeah. No,
I remember him from way back when.
yeah. When he was a Greenwich, he was like a Greenwich sort of
Yeah.
high class guy who looked down to
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, wrestling is another. I mean, not as much anymore. I don't watch it as much anymore, but through the probably from sort of the mid '90s through
That was the
to
era.
yeah, that was the
I
Attitude
missed the
Era.
John Cena. Weirdly, John Cena just followed me on Twitter. I was like, oh, that's tight. But I'm actually not even that big of a fan of John Cena. Like, I didn't watch John Cena wrestling at all. It was always like, I mean, my days were like the early '90s, like 1-2-3 Kid and
Yeah,
Yokozuna and Diesel before he was Kevin Nash and Razor Ramon. Like that was the era of, and then obviously The Rock and Stone Cold and all those guys too.
yeah.
But after they all left and kind of moved out, I was like, I'm kind of cool on WWE for now.
Yeah, I still sort of keep one eye on it, and we've got a few of our streaming services over here now have picked up the WWE network, so it's included as part of our package, so we can watch all the
Nice.
pay-per-views and stuff for free. So I have been keeping an eye. Like WrestleMania is what 3 weeks away or something, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So I'll probably watch it. But I was a bit the same once all those guys that I grew up with sort of transitioned out. I lost a bit of interest, and a few of them probably hung on too long and tried to keep wrestling. And
I think Ric Flair's still out there, man. Like, I
he's
don't know.
still around. He's still around. And surprisingly, like quite a few of them have actually gone on to be good actors.
Yeah.
As we've seen, The Rock,
The
obviously, but
Miz has kind of made
The
it a little
Miz,
bit, which I'm kind of
um,
surprised about. But yeah,
yeah,
The Rock
yeah.
is
John
superstar
Cena,
now. John Cena,
he's
yeah.
a good actor now. Batista has been
That's
in
right. Good point.
a lot
Yeah.
of good movies.
Mhm.
So, um, well, yeah, I mean that sort of transition, I suppose. Do you is something because for me, movies, TV, I love watching movies and TV. Is that something that you sort of try to do when you do have some downtime, or are you more of a book person?
I'm actually a true crime guy. I
Mm,
watch a lot of ID, investigative discovery, true TV, murder mystery stuff, everything on HBO Max. From Game of Thrones to, back in the day, The Sopranos. I still watch The Wire reruns if I really have time on my hands. Yeah, I've always been an HBO loyalist, and now I'd say it's more so FX. I watch everything that's on FX, from The Walking Dead to Snowfall to Dave. But much of my time, I'd say, like the time that I'd get to spend, late night, if I'm not watching a 7 p.m. Warriors game or the Kings, I'll probably throw on some trash TV on
yeah.
Netflix. I definitely got some guilty pleasures in there that I probably don't want to admit to, but 90 Day Fiance was definitely up there for quite some time.
Yeah. Oh no, look, I think
It's
we all
horrible.
have our shows that we don't want to talk about, but um, yeah, and I saw so The Wire. I mean, The Wire was something I never really got into The Wire, but I saw that Lance Reddick passed away,
Yeah, yeah, great
um, and
actor.
and I didn't know him from The Wire. I knew him from John Wick,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was
Great in that movie.
yeah and I mean the new one's obviously just about. Well, it comes out here I think next week.
Hmm.
Um, so he'll be in that. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock. Um, yeah, I don't mind those true crime. We get a lot of those true crime things as well. But then Game of Thrones, Rings of Power. I watched like all of those sorts of big. I just finished watching The Last of Us, which was
I gotten to 2 episodes, so I need to get through it. I was
yeah.
impressed with the first 2 episodes. I've heard a couple of mixed reviews, but I definitely need to finish it.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I mean, my bar's pretty low. Like, I just like TV, so it doesn't take too much. Um, and then at the moment, I'm working my way through the league. I've never watched the league, um, which is that show about
Yeah, the
fantasy
fantasy. Well,
football.
or at least they met. Is it all about? Yeah, it's all about fantasy football, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I need to check that
So
out.
a lot of my mates who I play with have watched it and told me to watch it, and I just never have. But I'm just getting into that now, and so far I'm impressed. So you said prior to sort of moving into this space, you travelled a lot.
Mhm.
Any sort of favorite destinations anywhere that you've been that you sort of would love to go back to?
I think Tokyo was definitely up there. I didn't spend enough time. I was there for about 3 or 4 days, and I was doing like it was like a hopper kind of trip. So I spent three
Yeah,
days in Tokyo, a few days in Okinawa, and then I went a few days in Seoul, Korea, Seoul, South Korea. Um, and I thought Tokyo was just amazing. Just the food. I didn't even really get a chance to even get to the fish side of it. Like I ate a ton of ramen. Let a little bit of sushi, but like now that I'm like really into sushi, I need to go back and get some
yeah,
more bluefin tuna. Um, what else? San Sebastian in Spain was also really cool. Very northern part of Spain, right on the tip or the border of France, southern
yeah,
France, and
yeah,
just amazing food there, and just a very quaint small city. I think my wife saw something on like Anthony Bourdain and was like very interested in going there, and I would have never expected. Like I was thinking, like, hey, if we're going to Spain, we're going to Barcelona. Let's go to
yeah.
Valencia. All the bigger Madrid, which we did also go to. But I thought that the best time in terms of food, culture, and just immersion into the experience was definitely San Sebastian.
Yeah, I think you find sometimes those smaller cities are better. They're less touristy, a
Yeah,
little bit more niche. We went to Spain, to Barcelona, and yeah, it was fine, but it was just another big city sort of thing.
right, right.
But yeah, like and Italy, we did Rome, we did Venice, we did those big cities, but we actually liked it down in on the Sorrento coast where it's
Ooh,
not
yeah.
as not as touristy, not as popular, so less people. So yeah, I'm not surprised that you sort of said that. And Australia, have you ever been to Australia or no?
Have not, but it's on the bucket list, man.
Mm.
Definitely need to go. Now it's just a matter of like, how do we orchestrate keeping a 2-year-old chill on, on that long of a flight? And then what else is the, what's what's the jumping off point? Like we should probably stop in a city first, spend some time there, and then continue the flight on. So yeah, I think we're going to probably try to plan that out over the next decade or so. I
Yeah.
think that's going to be like the longest trip we're probably going to have to make.
Yeah, it's about a 20-hour flight, something like that. So it's a long one. A 2-year-old, that'd be tricky with a 2-year-old.
Yeah, we'll probably have to wait till he's at least able to like sit in his chair and be a civil
Yeah,
human being for more than a
yeah,
couple of hours.
yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, plenty to see over here. But there's a lot of because generally you'll go to the capital cities. There's quite a big distance between cities over here. Which I mean, it's not not unlike America, I suppose, but because Australia has a big empty spot in the middle where no one really lives, you're sort of looking at like from one side to the other, it's 5-6 hours.
Okay,
Um,
that's
but
drivable for me. Like I would drive about that to go to college. I
yeah, oh
went
no,
to
that's
Virginia
flying.
Tech. Oh, flying. Oh,
Yep,
ooh, yeah.
yep.
Never mind. So
No,
that's like
no,
pretty much
no.
a cross country trip right there.
Driving, it's oh god, I'd have to put this in miles. Kilometers to miles. So from one side of the country, I think it's over 2,000 miles. I have a feeling it's about 3,500 kilometers
Okay.
from one side to the other. So anyway, it's doable. Um, so the one question that I'm asking everyone that comes on here, and I mean the answers are going to change depending on when I talk to people. But
Sure.
if we were drafting next week, for instance, where are you taking Wembanyama?
Oh, so many factors because we don't know where the landing spot is.
No.
Yeah, the situation's certainly going to matter, but I was trying to go back and look at some historical rookie seasons. For some reason, I kept on getting drawn to Karl Anthony Towns,
Yep.
18 points, 11 rebounds, couple of assists with almost 2 blocks and a steal, shot 54% from the field. I think that's probably I feel like that's a good floor for him. The thing I have questioned, like, is he going to be more of like a Durant, or can he actually hit the glass like that? And I think that the rebounds probably won't be there. I think 19 points, 18, 19 points, 7 or 8 rebounds with like 2 or 3 blocks, I think is actually in the realm of possibility. So if you're getting that with efficiency, I mean, that's a third round pick. Am
Yeah.
I going to do it? I feel like early third I could get around, but I'm also usually pretty hesitant on overdrafting rookies. I usually don't like drafting rookies at all. I mean, if you look at this season alone, we have only a couple people in the top 100, that being Walker Kessler and Jalen Williams, 2 people that were late round picks, right?
Yep.
So overspending for a rookie, but we're talking about generational alien here. So I probably wouldn't have been saying that for LeBron James or Kevin Durant or some other players that have come up recently. So I would say early third round pick.
Yeah, look, I think that's probably where I'm going to have him. I fear, and I think, I reckon he'll go first round. I just think people will take him in the first round. I'm not saying I would do that.
Right.
But I reckon if someone on the turn, someone who has pick 11, pick 12, and they can get someone maybe like a Damian Lillard or sort of a surefire thing who's going to play 70 games and you know what you're going to get, I reckon the risk, it'll just be too tempting. So I think Wembanyama's ADP will be probably around the turn, maybe like 15, something like
15.
that.
Yeah.
A little bit rich for me, but
yeah.
I mean, oh God, look, but he is sort of one of those guys, I think, that you're just going to want him on your team, like just on our team. So
right. He's going to have those games where he's just going to be like, oh, here's Victor Wembanyama with 4 blocks and 2 steals and like 4 3-pointers. Like those are I feel like he could do like Jaren Jackson like things, but get more rebounds.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
be a
the
little bit more
rebounds are the
dynamic.
things that worry me a little bit. It's similar to
Mhm,
what you said. I don't think he'll be a double-digit rebounder. I think he'll be sort of 7 or
mhm,
8
mhm.
per game, and I think part of that will be whoever drafts him. Well, I mean, it's some of the teams that could draft him. You have to question their coaches and their
Oh
front
yeah,
office and that sort of thing. But it would make sense to try to not have him in just constantly banging inside until his body fills out.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
totally agree with
so
that.
I think they are going to be okay with him playing away from the basket a little bit, which he can do. So,
What
uh,
destination would you rather see him at? What do you think is
oh,
best for him?
I know we were talking about this last night. Actually, I went out with some mates in my fantasy league. I I don't know. I'm sort of torn. Like I think in terms of talent, I'd like to see him in Houston. I just think Houston have got some good young guards and good young
Yeah,
pieces, but with
the
with
coaching.
with Silas as a coach, no. Um, much the same in Detroit. I don't know. I think Detroit have got some good young pieces as well. Um, Probably in terms of excitement and watching him play, the Spurs would be bottom of my list, but I actually think they'll be the best team in terms of developing him.
Right.
Um, so I'm not sure. What about you? Have you got a preference?
If Charlotte could get there, I think that would be interesting.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah,
Like reports came out that Michael Jordan's trying to sell. I think that's probably a good thing for what
yeah,
he's done to the franchise.
yeah,
Um, but at this point, like I think having him paired with a dynamic point guard would be awesome, and one that's also could be pass first. So I think LaMelo Ball would, as much as he's improved his 3-point shooting this year, I think he could definitely use a Robin, and I think that
yeah,
could be a great person to just throw those alleys to. Get involved. He's definitely. I've always wanted to see what LaMelo would look like with a prominent big man, or almost like a big man. Um, I think Detroit's interesting with Cade Cunningham too, but
mm,
Dwayne Casey's another one of those coaches where I'm like, I don't like the fantasy fit for that. So, and I agree with you. Development wise, I think the San Antonio Spurs make a ton of sense just for what they can do to develop raw talent into
yeah.
legitimate basketball players.
Yeah. I didn't mind Orlando when Orlando were looking like they could be in that. And I mean, technically, I suppose they could still get him, but
Yeah,
there's not a high chance. But I think Fultz has proven this season that he's a really, really good NBA point guard.
I agree.
And then they've got Wendell Carter Jr. You can slide him down to the 4 if you need to. Franz, like they've got a versatile lineup. They've got guys that they can shift around. I still have hope for Suggs. I'm not as sold on him as I was to start the season, but I
Mhm.
still think he can be a good role player on a team. So we'll
Yeah, I'm
see.
curious
We'll
to see
see.
what they do about Cole Anthony, and I don't know. I feel like they're just backcourt's getting a little bit crowded right now, and then with all of their bigs that also can handle the ball. I don't know. Suggs, he had a couple of flash games of you really
Mm,
saw his defensive upside, as well as his efficiency improved. Like he was shooting 40% from three over the last several games. But yeah, can he just keep that up? It's the consistency that I just don't know that I see yet in his game.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Okay. Look, so I mean, that's probably it. That's about half an hour. That's what I was hoping for. So before we jump off, tell everyone, I guess, what you're doing. I know content is winding down a little bit, but I'm sure you've still got some stuff going on with both your roles.
Yeah, I'll check me out on Twitter at Dan Titus, as well as check me out on yahoo.com. I have a ton of basketball content, not only closing out the season. If you're vying for the fantasy championship, make sure you check out my waivers piece every week. Round Ball Stew on that podcast with Raf Johnson. Check that out. We'll also be recording throughout the off season, giving you our hits, our misses, as also some predictions as we're going into the next season. And yeah, and hopefully I'll be doing some basketball playoff coverage for on the betting side of things, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, hit me up on Twitter. DMs are open, so always happy to answer questions regarding fantasy basketball or other.
Very nice. Thanks, Dan. So that'll do it for today's show. Remember, you can check out all of our content, our Discord server. We've got some playoff leagues coming up, and Matt Lawson has got a lot of Dynasty stuff coming out. We'll be launching the Dynasty podcast probably in April at some point. You can follow us on Twitter. Follow this podcast as well on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Hit the thumbs up on our YouTube show. That would be really nice. We're starting to build our following. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.